Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you cutting edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. And we are so going to do it again tonight. We have an incredible guest, and I'm so excited for Augie to tell us about her. Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you. Sorry, guys.
Echo.
I know. I didn't expect that. Uh, before we get started, before Augie tells you about our incredible guest, I just want to tell you about something very exciting and very new. It is our membership community that is launching tonight. You will be seeing it everywhere. You'll get an email from YouTube. You'll see it on our YouTube page, and Mac is going to send it out. He's going to blast it out to you guys, and it's a really cool thing. It's a more intimate forum where you receive content that is specifically for the community. It's not the content that we put out every week. It's a little bit deeper. It's a little more personal. There's questions, there's answers, there's getting to know each other. Augie and I are going to, some of the experiences that we wanted to share, but we're not quite ready to share with, the public at large. We may test pilot it in our very safe, community cauldron, if you will. So be on the lookout for that. And if you choose not to join the community, we still love you, and we will still see you every Tuesday night and on those special times when we have special programming. But for now, Augie, please tell us about our guest.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to have so much fun tonight. And before I actually do introduce you to the guest, if you like what you hear tonight, please subscribe on YouTube, because it helps us a lot, and it tells us we are doing the right thing. And that is important. Besides, if you subscribe, then you'll get a notification when the next shows are coming up, and there will be some new stuff. So
if you click the bell, right?
Yes, absolutely. Just click it, and guess what? It's free. Okay. So anyway, we have Michelle Freed with us, and we're going to step way outside of the box again tonight. But it is not going to be out in unfamiliar territory, because we're going to talk about some things that is actually, there's some science behind explaining that it's real. And we will start out with something that cannot be explained by Newtonian physics, but can and is explained by quantum mechanics, but can and is explained from quite a long time ago. The CIA was doing a program that lasted over 20 years on this particular subject that I want to start out with, and that is remote viewing. And I'll tell you, the CIA, they don't throw money at something for 20 years unless that it works. And we're going to talk about that, because this is going to get good. And Michelle is a teacher, and she runs 6-week classes on the remote viewing. And she's using her method of what I guess is called trans-dimensional system. And yes, trans-dimensional. You're going to hear about how that works, because it is not necessarily all in the physical where the action happens, but we're able to bring it into the physical and all the way up to conscious understanding, so we can see things at a distance. She also worked with Institute for Noetic Sciences, and I could not think of anybody more qualified to talk on this remote viewing than her. So she is also a member of the National Guild of Hypnosis, and she was a producer for Art Bell at, that'd be kind of fun to hear about, because being a producer for him, she got introduced to some of the most phenomenal people on earth because of the guests that she was able to book for him. So anyway, welcome to the show, Michelle.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Very exciting. I have one question. How did you begin? How did you get into all of this? How did your, what pathway brought you to here?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, I would say that about I don't know, 12 years ago, something like that. Me and my kids planned a road trip for 8 weeks during the summer. And I ended up so we started, I live in Chicago. So we started in Chicago, headed west, and I reconnected with a friend of mine from high school. And she had at that point already wrote 3 books on psychic development. And she told me to take her class. She told me, I'm careful with my words. She told me to take her class. And I remember being very skeptical because I would consider myself a skeptical believer. And I'm like, yeah, you have to be born with it. I can't do that. And she said, no, no, take the class. So I did. And she's a fantastic teacher. And I just got to a point where every time I tried to explain what was going on in my own mind, I just ran out of excuses about how this is working, and I just surrendered to the idea that there is something going on. And so in the process of taking her classes, she had been learning remote viewing, and she used us in the class as kind of guinea pigs, and she experimented with us. And I loved it. And I was like, I need to know more about this. This is really something that feels right for me. And so I just started, globbing on to any information that I could. I took as many classes, and I just seemed to have a knack for it. So the people that I was learning from were some of the ex-military guys, like Joe McMoneagle, Lynn Buchanan. I took some courses from Lori Williams, and then I met John Vivanco, who, when the CIA declassified remote viewing, the Stargate program in the 90s, he, along with another woman named Prudence Calabrese, created a remote viewing that was more for civilians. And once I learned that, after I had learned what they call controlled remote viewing, I felt like that one was better for me. I felt like I can flow through that much easier. And so the rest is history. I just ended up working on teams with people and really traveling the universe with my mind in a way, just asking questions and getting answers. And one of the things I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with in terms of remote viewing, and the idea of, like how Aggie said, that it's kind of science based, is the fact that when we remote view, we do not know what we're remote viewing. As a viewer, you have like a manager who will set up a project, but you don't know what the target is. So you're completely blind to the target. They'll send you some kind of random number that they assign to the target, and then you follow the methodology that you're taught. And what it looks like is sitting at a desk with pen and paper. Sometimes you get out of your seat and you move around, and you just have an experience. And you write down your perceptions and you sketch things out. And so you have data in front of you, and you just kind of go through your session, you send it back to them, and then they'll give you what's called feedback. Then you take that feedback and look at your session, and then you start to get some results from it, and it gets analyzed, and we come up with fascinating information. So that's like cool. Remote viewing in the 30-second elevator speech of remote viewing. I think it was more than 30 seconds.
Excellent. That was excellent. I love that. So I would imagine the more you do it, the more you understand like your language, right? If you draw something and you're like, okay, what the heck is that? Then you get your feedback and you're like, oh, okay, that's what that means. You get more confident in it. Yes. And more
Yeah,
easy
there,
to
one of
understand.
the complications of remote viewing, and like Joe McMoneagle said, that in order to be a world-class remote viewer, you have to give up what it means to be human. And so
Okay.
I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So what that means is that as humans, we look for patterns and we want everything to make sense. And when you're remote viewing, we don't want to do that. We don't want to look for patterns. We want to say in our mind, you get what you get, even if it seems random, because we're connected to an intention of whatever we're looking at. So the military came up with a term called AOL, and that stands for analytical overlay. And basically, when we're in a session, we're taught that you want to describe things, but you don't want to name them. So the classic example is if I said, I'm perceiving something red, shiny, round, and then your mind picks up that pattern and says, oh, it's an apple.
Right.
But what if we find out that the target, you're working on a missing person, and the target is a red truck?
Yes.
And so you're telling the detectives to look around for an apple and a fruit basket,
Right.
So you have to be very careful, but we can't really take away our human factor. So we have to learn to cope with this idea. And so it ends up being a kind of right brain, left brain situation where you have to learn to balance your left brain and your right brain. Keep that logic,
Yes.
keep it turned down and move up your right brain. And that's kind of how we go through a session. And that's why it's not foolproof yet, because we're still human. We haven't been able to get over it being human.
And then I can't help but go back to a word that you said in the beginning, was to surrender. So we have to surrender, right, to letting that intellectual, that logical construct go in order to go into the AOL. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing, is in remote viewing, it's, learning it is not just, it's great. We're getting information about different things, but it's also a personal journey. And there is a little bit of a Zen element to it where we're really taught to let go of the idea. I have it written down because let go of the idea of what we think we know about ourselves and the world around us.
Yes.
And it's not easy to do that, because we're kind of, our left brain really wants to hold on to these ideas. And the truth is that remote viewing allows us to reconnect to our intuition. And that's where the truth is. That's where the reality is.
So I was going to ask if you find that people who meditate tend to do better than other people, but that's not really the case because we're looking at intuition. Yeah.
We have a cool down that we do ahead because the idea is we want to kind of clear things and start from, I guess, a blank slate. We don't want to have any kind of preconceived ideas, or we want to start just from a place of nothing and just
blank slate.
Or the black pearl. Don't they call that the black pearl? It's just the place of nothing. And that right there is hard to do because meditation is you're kind of like moving, like I feel like you're constantly moving everything. But I think it's really helpful to calm yourself down and just kind of say to yourself, okay, I'm going to remote view now. Like telling your mind, your body, your soul that right now I'm going to set aside my life and all these things going on here, going to set it. And we actually have that built into the training. We set aside everything, and we're kind of opening up this kind of channel or portal to allow the target to come to us. And our job is just to report what we are perceiving using all our senses.
I love that. I'd like to give you one example that will not get out of my head right now. We do Mastermind Sunday, where a bunch of people come together and we create an intention, and then we go on a visual journey, an imagery journey, to create the feeling of the outcome that we want. And Linda, who's in the chat room with us, always drew. She drew everything. And Michelle, she would, if I was going to say treasure chest, she drew a treasure chest before we even started. And that it continued like that week after week after week. Is that a form of remote viewing, or?
Yeah, that's also built into the training, because it's like automatic writing. It's connected to your subconscious. And what happens is we have something we call ideograms. And we really start the process with an ideogram, which is this connection straight to your subconscious. And then we unpack the information from our ideogram that sets the stage, so we have something to describe in our session. Some cool things that have happened with my students. One of the targets I gave was, it was a train that was traveling on a track, which was a bridge between two cliffs. And the person handed in their session, and they had a sketch of a vertical tall building, and it had like little windows going down, and then they had the AOL, because you mark that on your paper, building. And I thought, when I was looking at the session, if I took his picture and I turned it sideways, it looked exactly like the photo of their target. Wow. So the thing is that your subconscious, when the left brain is kind of put to sleep a little bit, your right brain is communicating. And because the subconscious doesn't use words or language like we know, it's using symbols and metaphors and analogies and things like that. It can come out on your session in so many different ways that you, being the person sketching it, won't actually see it. But if you look at it from, once you get your feedback, you're like, oh, that's what that is.
I did get it.
Yeah. So it makes total sense. And then the thing you mentioned, which was really interesting, is you said that before you even started, she had her sketch. That does happen. A lot of students, when I say, okay, everyone, we have a target, they automatically come up with some flash of an image. So we call that an advanced perception. And so we have them actually record that in their session. And then we tell them to set it aside, because sometimes those are wrong. So you don't want to rely on that so much. But we do have a place for that. And it happens a lot. Yeah.
I love that. Michelle, will you share your website for all of the people in the chat room that want to go, peek at what you've got while you're talking? And then I know Augie has questions that I'm hogging you.
Okay, so butterflyeffectcenter.com. So it's butterfly, BUTTERFLY, effect, EFFECT, center, CENTER.com. And then there's a remote viewing page, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there about hypnosis and remote viewing and things like that. So you could just kind of scan through that.
Just surf
it, right?
Yeah, there you go. I'm wondering, when you go and start an exercise like this with remote viewing, do you do something to the brain and the mind before, like maybe lower the brainwave pattern into the alpha range, or would it be better if you were able to synchronize the two hemispheres? There's an exercise to do that. And are you using any of these?
So what I do is I kind of came up with this thing. I use a visual meditation. So we use visualizations. And so what we do is we visualize a gauge. And so I'll start out with a special meditation that sets this up. But essentially what we're doing is taking a gauge and putting it over the left brain and turning the dial down on your left brain and then moving it to the right brain and dialing up on your right brain. And what's really, because this is a great tool that you could use, like if you're someone that has ADD or something like that, and say you have to like work on your budget or your books or your money situation, it's really good you turn up your left brain and you turn down your right brain, so you're not all,
That's fabulous.
And so that is a really good tool that people use to try to get over that kind of keeping a balance. And the other thing, there's a whole bunch of tools that we do like in cool down. And one thing is we like to do like binaural beats, and we take it to theta. And I also have, I guess I'm going to put a plug in here, something called a Pandora Star, which is a flickering light therapy where you lay down under the light and your eyes are closed, and that does sync up your left and right brain. But we kind of, for remote viewing, we definitely want to be in theta, but we don't want our left and our right brain to be synchronized for remote viewing, because we want our left brain kind of taking a lower role in our process. We don't want that left brain hijacking the session.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
What are some of the most extravagant discoveries at a distance that you or your people have done?
Well, I think one cool, there's so many, I don't even know where to begin with that, but I know that you are interested in the Knights of the Templar. So I'll tell this story. So when I'm not remote viewing, I'm working like a real person, and I'm a publicist. And I was speaking with an author, and her name is Gretchen Cornwell. I'm not sure if you are familiar with her. And she does a ton of research on the Knights of the Templar. In fact, she has done several spots on the Mysteries of the Oak Island show. She's been on there helping and consulting. And then she also works on other documentaries. She's kind of an expert in this area. And I was speaking with her to see if she would come on and become a client of mine. And so we were talking, and then of course, because I'm obsessed with remote viewing, of course I brought it up. And I said, if you're doing any research, I have, because I'm trying to put together a team of remote viewers, because I get called all the time to find missing people, missing things, missing pets, treasures, and a million other things that people are willing to like pay us to help them to do the stocks and picking stocks, wagering on sporting it. Like there's so many things, and healing and so much. And so I'd like to get a team of people that will come. It's not a ton of money. It's like mama needs a new pair of shoes money, but it's something, so anyway, I said to her, I would love to get some of my students to remote view and help you with your research, And so she said, oh, and then, we're on a Zoom call like we are now. And the next thing I know is, out of nowhere, she picks up this statue. It looked like a wooden tree, like a tree stump, and something carved out of some kind of tree or something, and it looked like some kind of person, and I couldn't really see details because it was through the screen like this. And I'm like, no, don't tell me anything, I don't want to know anything. And so she put it down. I said, okay, let me set up a project. And I had 3 of my students work on it. So basically their secret question that they didn't know was that I wanted them to describe the origin of the statue, you know, and describe it and tell us everything they can about it. So we got these 3 sessions and they were incredible. I mean, they just nailed it. They just had concepts in there and everything leaning towards, you know, the Knights of the Templar. And even so basically I called up Gretchen and I said, hey, could we have another Zoom meeting with the viewers so they can tell you about their sessions, and then you can give them feedback and see what they did. So we all met, and she kept like going like this, like her mind was blown. And all of a sudden she burst out and she said, this is Sir Henry Sinclair. Everything that you are saying, you're describing Henry Sinclair. And he was a very pivotal person in, you know, with the Knights of the Templar, and very connected back then. And so they had all these concepts. It's like they were, because she had done research on them, they were saying things like, the subject is very close to the family. There's like a long heritage. They had a religious vibe in their session. Some people were even talking about the statue itself and describing it as carved out tree trunks, wow, which is what that looked like. And then it had weird symbols on it. And some people were getting pictures of, you know, sketching out weird symbols and whatever. So she took all these sessions and she's adding this segment that we were doing on Zoom into her documentary. Wow. So it just came up with a lot, and they're still now doing research on some of the information that we got, lining it up to her research. So wow, it's still an ongoing thing, which is really, it feels very satisfying, you know, to get stuff and to put researchers on the right track to things. So
must be so satisfying. I just want to say a shout out to everybody in the chat room, and thank you, Christopher Harmon, for your super chats. Thank you for your super chats, guys. It helps us defray the cost of the show and the production. So it's always so welcome. But I just want to say, hey, I want to say shouties to Margaret. Hi, Margaret. Hi, Linda. Hi, Mac. Hi, Obi, Dana, Tim, the Andromedan is here. Hi.
Hey, we have an Andromedan.
Nancy, our moderator, is here. Julie's here. Captain Sam Wilson is here. Hi, Captain. Tosh is here. Christopher Harmon is here. And again, thank you, Christopher. So good. And there's a bunch of you other people here, but you have not posted. So Augie, I would love for you to ask the question that you had about remote viewing, about do we go somewhere, or is it all, yeah.
Yeah, that's another subject that I would love to have you talk on, and that is near-death experiences.
Well,
but I gotta ask one question first.
Yeah.
Did you find the treasure?
No, we didn't remote view the treasure. I haven't done that, but I have done a lot of other cool things. Like, are you familiar with the Baltic Sea anomaly? Have you guys heard about that? So it is in the Baltic Sea. They found
that one. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we did that because the question we wanted to know is this man-made or natural? And almost every person who has done this session came up with it being man-made and they always have like UFO or aliens in their session. And keep in mind, they don't know they're looking at the Baltic Sea anomaly. They know nothing. And it's just, interesting. So yeah, that was really cool to get that information too.
I think it's almost impossible for that to be a natural phenomena because 60 feet, I think it is wide. It's got stairs in it. It's got sections on it. No, that's a ship of some type.
It also looks like there's some kind of writing, or maybe, like some kind of hieroglyphics or something on the outside of it. The patterns, and it's enormous. I mean, it's humongous. And sessions have been pointing towards, believe it or not, Atlantis. A lot of people start describing Atlantis in this session. So I'm curious to know if there is a connection between Atlantis and this could be some kind of relic from that, or maybe a craft that they used or something. So
it's been on
we need more
been on the bottom of the ocean for a very long time, and it also sends out a signal, because when the divers went down, they had a radio communication with the boat through the water, and the radio communication died because it was interference.
Wow. And I may have to turn the left side of my brain dial down. Forgive me if I hijacked the conversation on the Knights of Templar. Please, let's go back to that if I cut you short. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Dial that down. Okay.
The NDEs, you have done some real good research on that. And my initial question is that when somebody have a near-death experience, they see themselves going somewhere, meeting spiritual individuals or entities, or maybe their mom, and then coming back. Did they actually go somewhere, do you think, or was it all in their head? What do you think?
I know that just related to, remote viewing, the idea is all surrounded by projecting your consciousness somewhere. And so that's, basically what we're doing is we're setting an intention, and it kind of is our compass that takes us, to different places. And it's similar to me to astral projection, where we do, obviously we're not physically going there, but it's kind of our, I guess the way I describe it is like we split off. There's like a split that happens. And how I understand it is that you have part of your mind or your consciousness stays here in the one place. Like, I guess my example is astral project. So you're laying in bed, so your mind splits and has the ability to have the one part of your consciousness that's sleeping, and the other part of your consciousness, which is having an experience. And the trick is to recall things when they come back together. So when your body returns, or when your soul returns to the body, the idea, and not everybody has the ability to do this. There are some people that, I don't know if it's natural. I don't even know if you can be trained for it. I think that just some people can. I believe we all leave our body, but only certain people can remember it. And so that part of the mind reconnects, and then you're able to kind of, everything clicks in, and then you can recall what happened. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sort of kind
it
of?
could.
Absolutely.
You brought up another term also that was kind of new to me, and that is shared near-death experiences.
shared next. Yeah. Yeah. There is Dr. Scott Taylor. He is someone that actually had a shared near-death experience, and I don't want to ruin the story for him. I think he's going to be a future guest on your show. He's done a ton more research on this than me. And I would love him to tell the first, because it's a very touching, emotional story. And it just also shows us our potential as humans, that we haven't even reached close to what our abilities are.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets deep when you get into that pool.
It is, and it's, you know, we have to keep working on these things. I think that's what's, you know, I think that when we were primitive, when we first, you know, came around or whatever, I think our intuition was natural. It was just part of living and being alive and all that. And I think over the years, moving through technology, coming into education, and you know, nowadays we just pick up our cell phone and find out what the weather is going to be, instead of, you know, like walking outside and the rain's coming, there's a storm coming. You know, we don't do that anymore. We're just looking at our weather app. And so we move farther and farther apart from our, you know, intuition and into our antennas. Like, we are antennas, right? So I think that for me, remote viewing is a way to reconnect to your intuition. And it's a very structured way to do it. And there's a lot of people out in the world that are so they call them sensitive, because they're picking up like people's thoughts, and they're very psychic and things like that. And some of those people don't, you know, it comes spontaneous and it interrupts their lives, and they can't really, it's hard to have a very productive life when you're constantly seeing dead people or reading people's thoughts, and you know, it's really hard. So with remote viewing, I feel like it's training, like a martial art, where you can take control of your abilities, turn them on and turn them off, you know, so that you can function through life and have the beauty of these gifts.
Yes. And here's a question that ties right into that. So Linda asked, how can you protect yourself from things you accidentally see that are traumatizing?
Yeah. So, you know, that's a good point, because we work on missing people a lot, and not everybody can do those kinds of sessions, because sometimes the outcome isn't, you know, it's not a great outcome. So one of the things that I do is, before I do a session, like when I'm doing an operational session, which means like for somebody else, I ask myself, you know, because I'm at the point where I'm kind of tuned in, like, is this in my highest good to do this session? You know, and I think, and then also we train the students to put up protection, because we are, you know, everything I do is benevolent. I don't, you know, I have no desire to go into any negativity, and I kind of was just born in a positive, I'm just very positive. I don't really see negative. People actually have to go, Michelle, that's not good, you know, and I don't see it naturally. They have to kind of tell me, which is really, like, I like that about myself. And I like that I'm not naive, but I just like that I'm positive. But other people are not. And some people they have fear. And so the best thing is to be putting up protection, just in case something kind of bleeds into a session that they weren't expecting. And it feels good. You know, even I will put up protection, because you just never know. And those are really, you know, because this is such I mean, remote viewing is real, and you have to be very responsible with it, because it's kind of like we all have our own superpower. And with something that like a superpower, you have to be responsible. You know, just look at DC and Marvel.
Right.
Superman and they're all, you know, they have to have some of a responsibility and not to misuse it. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
No, that was wonderful. So Rift Radio is here to support you. And the question is, could remote viewing be actual dimensional communication, much like the conscious collective? That's a great question.
Wait, say it again.
Could remote viewing could remote viewing actually be dimensional communication, much like the conscious collective?
So that's a good question.
Right.
So we actually do have something built in that there are times where we will get a non-human subject. It could be an interdimensional being or something like that. And we can actually question them. And you know, there is a protocol for that, to like, say you want to have a Zoom meeting with them and ask certain questions. So we do have something set up for that. The other thing that's really cool is remote viewing is really all about intention. So whatever you want to remote view, like there are times where I will give my students a session where I'll say, go to a past life, and that has a skill that can help you become a better remote viewer.
Ooh,
and that's
good.
their session where they come back and bring a skill into this life, or, you know, maybe go to, you know, a past life that, you know, where the origin of your fear of something, you know, you can do that. And then also, we have traveled, you mentioned your class that you do where you just kind of have a stream of consciousness, right? Where you mentioned that you meet.
Yes.
Okay, so we actually have something called image streaming, where we set up a target very similar to what you're talking about. And there have been practices where we did really fun things where we said, the target is, let's go to the 5th dimension.
Wow.
And it was really fun. Like we were all like, whoa, like for me, it was the cool, like I didn't want to leave.
Wow.
And it was funny because there were 4 of us that were doing it, and we're very verbal, because what we do when we're image streaming, everyone just kind of talks, you know, like, okay, I perceive this and that, and you're just like talking about your stream of what's happening in your mind, and then the next person talks and the next person. Well, in this one where we were doing the 5th dimension, there wasn't a peep. I mean, nobody was talking. And so the one that was monitoring said, oh, what's going on? You know, Michelle, what's going on? I don't feel like talking, man.
It was so amazing.
Good. I'm just feeling it. Yeah. Wow. It was very hard to describe, but it was a very cool experience.
That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant.
Aggie wants to come.
Oh God. Oh well. And now you also do hypnosis. Have you done any really interesting stuff when somebody went back in time, maybe before they were even born, or some interesting experience from that? Could you say something about that? Because Nori is a hypnotist and I do a little bit of it, so we're on your page here.
Yeah. So for hypnosis, I was so gung-ho about it. I was just so excited when I learned. It's the coolest thing. I've had therapy, like regular, standard, universal therapy, pretty much on and off my whole life. I had like hippie parents, and if I ever had a problem, they're like, go to the shrink and, you know, whatever. So like that was all part of my life, but it just droned on. Like therapy, just like I felt like I was always like, I wanted to get over it, but the therapist wanted me to keep talking about it. And I just never felt like I could get over a hump or anything. And then when I learned hypnosis and the hypnotherapy part of it, where you can actually use it to, help with, habits that you want to get rid of, or anything, it works so fast. Like you can really get through an issue in 3 sessions, really.
Yes.
Some are a little harder, but you can. And so I would get clients, and I was doing well, getting a ton of clients, but guess what happened? By the second session, we're already making progress. They're like emoting and crying. And then at the end of the session, I'm thinking like very proud of myself. And say, okay, so let's, get out the pen. Let's schedule your next session. They're like, yeah, I'll give you a call. I'll call you. My calendar's at home. I'll give you a call. Nobody wanted to, it was too fast. It's like they weren't ready. And I realized like you can't force people. And so I got so frustrated with it. So now I don't practice that unless somebody is just like I'll ask the question, are you willing to do anything? And then if they say yes, then I'll do therapy on them. But if I feel like it's a little wonky, I'm not, because they're not ready. It's like part of them is ready, but they're not fully ready. So I kind of backed away from that. But in the therapy stuff, I've had amazing success where we had done regression. And I'm going to choose my words carefully. There's age regression, and then there's past life regression. In age regression, there's no limitation, because an age regression can turn into a past life regression, because really we're going back to the origin of an issue. And sometimes those issues bypass the birth and go into another life. And I use the past life regression, where that is just my intention of the session. We're just going to go to a past life. But when I'm using therapy and I use like the age thing, that works really well. And so I had someone that came and they had a fear of flying. And then we worked on that, took them all the way back to the womb, and kind of dealt with that. And then, they didn't have a fear of flying anymore. But the exciting ones that I worked on, which this is really a crazy story, in the course of like a year, I'll say like a year, I had 3 separate clients. None of them knew each other, and they were on different parts of the world. One was in Chicago, one was in California, and one was in Canada. And they all throughout that year came to me, and just, kind of said, hey, I think I was abducted, and would you use hypnosis to help me to recall what happened when I was abducted? And so I said, sure, because I'm thinking it's just like anything else. Like I'm just going to treat it like, anything. And so I go into the session like just knowing nothing. I just keep my mind clear, no judgments. Although I did have like an inkling of maybe it was a dream, I don't know, but set that aside. Let's just go in here and just see what happens. Well, each one of them I hypnotized, took them to the events, and they all pretty much described the same thing. They were describing being off this planet on another planet, but the planet was in water and they were breathing water. And they described the world they were in. They all could not even come up with the words, the vocabulary to describe what they were experiencing. They were saying there are colors I've never seen before. There was vegetation I never saw, and there were like creatures that they've never seen before. And they weren't all identical. I mean, there were some differences, but the you know, the little marks of each one, I couldn't believe it. You know, first I did the first one, then a few months later I did a second one. I'm like, this is weird. And then a third one, and I'm like, whoa, 3 people all had a similar experience. None of them know each other, and they're on different parts of the world, and none of them knew they came to me. So
Yes.
I thought that was fascinating.
Yes.
It
Yes.
was really,
Very fascinating.
how
I
do you
love that.
describe that? I mean, explain
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So here's a question, and I'm not sure if it's a question. It's from Christopher Harmon. Chris says hi. Why didn't people remove you 911 question mark? No.
Why didn't people remove me 911?
Yeah, at 911, or did they? Maybe that's not, maybe there was a thread
Yeah.
going on that I can't put
I'm not
together
really
here.
sure what that means.
Yeah, all right. So we'll skip that. Okay. All right. All right. So Rift Radio was led to another question. How do you feel about reincarnation, and two, has anyone ever thought about?
Thought
Yeah.
about reincarnation?
Yeah. Maybe it's the second part. Has anyone thought about we can be reincarnated in the past or as another example? Instead of now or the future, we can be reincarnated into a period in the past. Okay, maybe you could clarify that for us, Rift. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And Christopher has one more. Can we remote view ETs? I've heard yes and no.
Of course.
That's what I
It's
thought.
just about setting an intention. When we set up our project, you know, we've done sessions. Is there a base on the moon? We've done, we did, I don't know if you're familiar with the Skinny Bob video. We did, so we remote viewed that. We remote view Bigfoot. We remote viewed, I mean, a lot of things. I mean, yeah, just a lot of things. We've remote viewed particular people to see if their story that they're telling is real. So that's another thing. Some of the people that come out and talk about their experiences, sometimes we'll remote view that person to see the reality of their story. And a lot of times we find out that that person really believes it, but it may not necessarily be true. Like something else might be going on.
So kind of forensic.
Yeah, something, or maybe they had a trauma or something.
Right.
We had a team hired by Tom DeLonge. And so that was like double blind because when they came to us to tell us we have a target for you, they didn't even tell us who hired us. So because if we knew that Tom DeLonge was hiring us, we for sure would get aliens, right? So they didn't tell us. They just said, we have a target and here's the target number. And we did our sessions, and it was weird because I had these like subjects holding these blue orbs. They were, I don't think they were human, but I had these like sketches of these outline of these people, like human looking people, but they were all holding these orbs in their hands. It was weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So we have a clarification.
Okay.
And did I lose it? Okay. Chris said, I meant, did anybody remote view the events of 9/11?
Yeah, I didn't, but yes, there is a whole bunch of people that did. And I mean, there's so many different, I'm not sure if I'm remembering all the results, but I know a guy named Daz Smith. and Courtney Brown. You can look them up and find out the results of what they came up with for 9/11. But yeah, it was very provocative, their information. So
Fascinating.
that was really cool.
So on a personal level, on a personal growth level, a personal development level, maybe even a spiritual level, because we only have 6 minutes left. I can't believe how quick this went. Tell people the other benefits that they receive when they take a remote viewing class with you, please.
Yeah, I think that a lot of, like, I personally just gained so much confidence in trusting my own gut feeling and intuition. You know, I would always second guess, but once you experience, you know, it's really, I can sit here and tell you how amazing everything is. And, you know, I could show you results of things. But the truth is, unless you have your own experience, you'll never know what it really feels like. So once you're in that experience and you realize the possibilities and the potential, you start learning to trust yourself. And so throughout my life, I've gained a lot of confidence in making decisions, trusting that little, because in the method that I teach, we pay a lot of attention to how our body is feeling. So we're very connected with the mind, body, and soul into the session. So we learn what things feel like. So I mean, even like, this may sound silly, but like I can have a little tickle in my pinky and I learn that that means something. Or I feel like I start paying attention to the different feels that you get in your heart when with different things. Like you can have like, say you feel sorry versus you're feeling like a love. They're in this area, but you start learning the differences and their triggers, and you start learning how to communicate with your body and your unconscious parts. So that's one thing. Another thing I mentioned earlier about the AOL is that throughout our lives, we assume a lot. We, like, even in relationships, we could probably, you know, cut out a lot of problems in relationships by not assuming or drawing conclusions in terms of communication. And, you know, so now I've added AOL as an adjective in my life. Like, I think I'm AOLing, you know, because I'm drawing a conclusion that can cause a conflict. So I'm learning that too. And I think what this does is it kind of helps you create, you know, here we are, but the master of us, like the Michelle 2.0. And so I start asking myself in a situation where I'm not feeling so good about myself, and I'll say, what would Michelle 2.0 do? What would, like, the Yoda Michelle, the 2.0, what would she do? And all these things, you know, it's just evolving us to be amazing people and understanding and caring and accepting and just reconnecting to our intuition. And it's tons more, because I think my students can sit here and tell you their personal, you know, ask Jim, because, or yeah, who was it? Yeah, is it Jim Harmon? No, what's his
Chris
Harmon.
That would be fun.
Sure.
That would be fun.
Tell people how to reach you, your website, your email, or your preference for people reaching you.
Yeah, so it's butterflyeffectcenter.com. And I have a contact form. So if you have any questions, I would love, like I said, we're creating a little remote viewing community. I'm also creating a team so that we can, you know, help other people with situations. And I just love teaching. I just love it. And so I can't teach if I don't have a class.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I would love people to get some information and take my class, and so we can build a community.
Wonderful.
And I hear also from others that is doing it, it increases your intuition phenomenally once you start practicing it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've noticed like people start talking about dreams. They have more lucid dreams. And so then I say, well, when you go to sleep at night, you can answer anything. Just set an intention, ask a question, write it down before you go to sleep, and then dream. And also remember to tell yourself to remember the dream. And then when you wake up, you can have an answer. We've done experiments using remote viewing to predict future outcomes using our dreams. And if you go to my website, you can see we have a peer-reviewed write-up on it. So you can go to the website and see what we did with that.
That's fabulous. Augie, do you want to ask your famous question before we end?
Yeah, I can do that. And after that, hang on, because I have a little bit of an announcement. For you, Michelle, if you could talk to the whole world and the world were listening, what would you tell them?
What would I tell them? Oh my gosh. I guess I would, I could go on for another hour. What would I tell them?
They're listening.
I guess I would tell them you're worthy. Just you're worthy, because there's so many people that just don't feel worthy. And I think you're worthy and you're worth, and you have a right to be here just as much as anybody else, and that you are love. And yeah, maybe that.
I love that. That's beautiful.
There you go. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
thank you.
At the very end here, I have an announcement that Nori and I are starting a new program we're calling it Broadcast Team Alpha University. And you will find a link in the below the